Okay, I want you to imagine the most embarrassing way a country could possibly lose a war. Got something in your head? Whatever it is, I promise you, it is not as bad as this. Because in 1932, a modern army with trained soldiers and actual machine guns marched out to fight an enemy and lost to birds. Big, dumb, flightless birds. This is the story of the Great Emu War, and yes, that is its real name. So grab a drink, because Australia is about to get humbled by a creature with a brain the size of a walnut. Let's set the scene. It is 1932. The whole world is deep in the Great Depression. Money is gone, jobs are gone, hope is running low. And over in Western Australia, you have got thousands of former soldiers. These are guys who fought in the First World War, came home, and were basically told, here, have a patch of dry, middle-of-nowhere farmland, now go grow wheat. So they did. They cleared the land, they planted their crops, and they tried to build a quiet little life out in the outback. And then the emus came. Now, if you have never seen an emu, let me paint the picture. It is a giant flightless bird, almost 2 meters tall, basically a small ostrich with the attitude of a football hooligan. It can sprint at 50 kilometers an hour. It has powerful legs, sharp claws, and a body that, as we are about to learn, is weirdly difficult to kill. And there were a lot of them. After their breeding season, around 20,000 emus started migrating inland, looking for water and food. And what did they find? Mile after mile of lovely, freshly grown wheat planted by exhausted war veterans. To the emus, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. They smashed through fences, they trampled the crops, they ate everything, and they left huge gaps that let rabbits in to eat whatever was left. It was a disaster. And here's the thing nobody warned the army about. Emus are absurdly tough. Their bodies are mostly feathers, long legs, and not a whole lot of vital target in the middle. People at the time reported emus running off after being shot several times, barely even slowing down. A single bird could soak up multiple bullets and just keep going, like it had read the script and decided it was the main character of the movie. So the army was about to march out expecting easy target practice. What they actually got was closer to a horror film monster that happened to look like a confused ostrich. So the farmers did what desperate people do. They went to the government. But these were not just any farmers. They were ex-soldiers, so they knew exactly who to ask. They went straight to the Minister of Defense and said, look, you trained us to use machine guns in the war. How about you lend us some machine guns and we deal with these birds ourselves? And here's the part that is genuinely hard to believe. The Minister of Defense said, yes, sure, why not? The government agreed to send in the military. They dispatched a small force led by a man named Major Meredith. He came armed with 2 soldiers, 2 Lewis machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. 10,000 for birds. They were so confident this would be a quick, glorious little operation that they even brought along a cameraman to film the triumph. They genuinely thought they were going to mow down a few thousand emus and be home for tea. The emus had other plans. The campaign kicked off in early November 1932, and right away, things did not go to plan. The first time the soldiers spotted a group of emus, they tried to herd them into a nice, tidy cluster to gun them all down at once. But the emus just split up. They scattered in every direction, running in small groups, making them almost impossible to hit. It was like trying to catch water with a fork. A few days later, the army got their big chance. About 1,000 emus came marching toward a dam, and the soldiers had set up the perfect ambush. They waited. They let the birds get close. And then they opened fire, and the guns jammed. After taking down only a handful of birds, the machine gun seized up, and the rest of the emus sprinted off into the bush, completely unbothered. Imagine that. You set the perfect trap, you pull the trigger, and your enemy just shrugs and jogs away. But it gets better. Major Meredith, clearly a man who refused to be beaten by poultry, came up with a new plan. He mounted one of the machine guns on the back of a truck. The idea was simple. Chase the emus down, drive alongside them, and blast them from the moving vehicle. There was just one tiny problem. The emus were faster, and the terrain was so rough and bumpy that the gunner could not aim at anything. The truck bounced around so violently that they did not hit a single bird. At one point, an emu reportedly got tangled in the steering and nearly caused them to crash. The birds were, quite literally, winning a car chase. And remember that cameraman they brought along to film the glorious victory? Yeah. He was now filming one of the most embarrassing military operations in history. Picture it. Soldiers, sweating in the heat, chasing birds across an open field, missing, swearing, reloading, missing again, while the emus calmly outran trucks and outran bullets like it was just another lazy Tuesday afternoon. By now, the soldiers were starting to develop a strange, grudging respect for their feathered enemy. Major Meredith himself said, and I am barely paraphrasing here, that if we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. He noticed the emus seemed to have leaders, big black-plumed birds that would stand guard while the others fed and sound the alarm at the first sign of soldiers. He compared them to Zulu warriors. He said they could take machine gun fire with the invulnerability of tanks. This is an actual military officer talking about large, confused birds, like they were an elite fighting force. After about a week, the numbers were in, and they were humiliating. The army had fired around 2,500 rounds of ammunition, and the number of confirmed emu kills, somewhere between 50 and maybe a few hundred, depending on who you believe, out of 20,000. The whole thing was quietly withdrawn. The news got back to Parliament, and you can imagine how that went. One politician asked if a medal would be handed out for the campaign. Another suggested the medals should go to the emus, who had clearly won every round. And honestly, it stuck. To this day, you will hear people say the emus are the only army to ever truly defeat Australia. There is a whole running joke online that the emus remain undefeated, that they never signed a peace treaty, that technically the war never officially ended. People make memes about emu war veterans. There are reenactments. An entire little piece of internet folklore grew out of 3 blokes, 2 machine guns, and a flock of birds that simply refused to die on schedule. The press had an absolute field day. Headlines around the world mocked the Australian army for losing a war to birds. And honestly, they had a point. Now, the farmers, still drowning in emus, begged for the military to come back. And, amazingly, they did, a few days later, for round 2. This time they had slightly better luck, picking off more birds over the following month. But let's be real. Even on a good day, they were spending a fortune in bullets to kill creatures that kept walking through gunfire like it was a light drizzle. It was never going to work. So in the end, the government gave up on the machine gun approach entirely. The Great Emu War was over, and the emus, against a modern military force, had absolutely, undeniably won. So what actually fixed the emu problem? Not soldiers, not machine guns. It was boring old bounties. The government started paying farmers a reward for every emu they took care of themselves, plus better fencing to keep the birds out. Unglamorous, cheap, and it actually worked. Turns out the answer was never going to be a guy on a bouncing truck. But here is why we still talk about it almost 100 years later. It is just so perfectly, gloriously absurd. A nation that had survived a world war got completely outmaneuvered by a flock of birds with tiny brains and a talent for running away. The emus didn't have a strategy. They didn't have weapons. They just had really good legs and the collective intelligence of a damp towel, and somehow, that was enough to defeat an army. These days, the emu is one of the proudest symbols of Australia. It is literally on their coat of arms. And there is something kind of beautiful about that. The bird that once shrugged off the entire Australian army now stands as a national emblem, staring out at the world like it knows exactly what it did. History is full of stories that sound way too stupid to be real. And the time a country declared war on birds and lost might just be the dumbest, funniest one of them all. If you enjoyed this one, stick around because I have got a whole pile of stories just like it. Worth it. I'll see you in the next one.